All right, everyone. Welcome to the first live recording session of the Mobile User Acquisition Show. Quite a couple of you have been guests already on the synchronous non-live version, so excited to have this elite panel here today. Please join me in welcoming our amazing guests. Diane German, Lead Performance Marketing Manager at Blinkist. Ekaterina Gams-Riegler, leads Marketing and Growth at Mimo. Natalia Drozd, Marketing and UA Lead at Fabulous. Gaurav Bhattacharya, Performance Marketing Lead at ZenJob. And I'm your host for the day, Shamant Rao, CEO at Rocketship HQ. And please, if this is interesting to you, check out the podcast Mobile User Acquisition Show, wherever you get your podcast fix, iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff. Right, let's jump in. Gaurav, one of your big wins lately has been combating creative fatigue on UAC and Meta. Talk us through what you've been trying, what you've seen work.
Yeah, sure. So we usually have a lot of strategies which we employ, so that could take like a long time, but I would dial it down to like mainly two strategies, which worked really well for us. The first thing was to have a very data-driven approach to like analyze our creatives and give feedback to our creative team. One of the things we do is like to analyze the metrics of our creatives on both the upper funnel level and on the lower funnel level. So upper funnel metrics like clicks, CTR, we definitely check those things, but we also go really lower level. So we look at like in-app events like signups and so. And when we look at those things, we try to see like where exactly the creative fatigue is coming from. So is it like due to upper funnel creatives which we use which are not working for us? Is it the use of certain color schemes which are not working for us? So we go ahead and try to make sure that we are able to give the right feedback to the creative team. And for that, we do a lot of testing. We do a lot of tests on Meta. We do a lot of tests on UAC, so to figure out like how we can find the right balance. And we also take the wins and the losses from different channels, which is important, because if you stick to one channel, that might not be the right approach. And the second approach we take is to make sure we make very different changes, very small changes in our creatives, which always sees a really good reaction to the user-centric behavior which we see of our users. So what we do is like we change, let's say, a CTA, a specific CTA, we change the color scheme a little bit, or we can change the stock images. That those small changes, which we might think might not work that well, actually works quite well, and it turns out to be quite beneficial for us.
Interesting. If I might double-click on an aspect of UAC, right? Because UAC is very black box-ish, and you're not getting clear asset-level metrics. So how, if at all, are you triaging fatigue data for UAC?
Yeah, that's a good question, I would say, because obviously the kind of data which Google gives us, it's not conclusive, but you can always like use scripts or you can use rules and figure out that what is happening on the creative level as well. Like take in the upper funnel metrics, as I said, like you have 3 different columns where you can see if the creative is good, best, or it's not low performing. So if you're doing that, that's fine, but you don't get the real message. So for example, let's say there could be a creative which has low CTR, but it's giving you signups in your app. So you can try to check those matrices. You can talk to the Google team. They can give you this sort of data, and you can get that data, and then you can decide like what you need to go for. So one of the things which we did from that data was to personalize our user-centric approach to ads. So what we did was that we saw that the kind of creatives which we are using are reaching creative fatigue quite early. So we started mixing it up. We do a mix of performance-oriented creatives. We do a mix of UGC creatives, and that always works for us.
Interesting, interesting. And that also ties in with what Nat, you had described in one of the editions of Mobile UA Show, which this day is one of our most popular episodes. And I've shared this with you. I'm not saying this just to be nice to you, and I've told you this before. Right? So, you talked about, you described an approach in that episode which very much mirrors what Gaurav talked about, which is it's really diversifying the asset mix. And Gaurav, not to put words in your mouth, but that's what I understood. How has that approach changed in the last 2 or 3 years? How has that approach changed post-ATT, with iOS just not playing well with scan on UAC?
So first, thanks for kind words. and there are a lot of hard work behind those episodes. And to be a little bit provocative, and not to make you fall asleep, guys, Google Ads are killing ASO. I'm telling this to make ASO managers a little bit scary, but the truth is the amount of ads which is being shown of Google different placements is continuously increasing. So, well, this is why Google does this, to increase its revenue, and it actually does it very, very profitably for them, because now way more ads are shown for brand assets. It was one thing that was making Google better than Apple, because on ASA, there are ads under every keyword if you want to bid on it. On Google Play, brands were protected for a very long time, so brand searches were protected by the brands. It's not a thing anymore, so no matter if you're a Duolingo or Mimo or Blinkist, watch out for competitors. If you don't invest in UAC, your traffic may be stolen. Of course, there is cannibalization and incrementality, but still, many people click on the thing which is the first. So one, it is more placements on Google Play. It's not the answer about creative, but it's more the answer about what Google does. Google knows the placements that work best, and it's Google-owned placements, and it's capitalizing heavily on them. Talking about iOS, from my personal experience and from experience of talking to Google people, there are very, very little success for subscription-based apps because of the lack of the signal and because of the pure messiness of data. The way Google interprets scan, the way MMP interprets scan, it makes it just super hard to measure. So it just makes it hard to use Google as a ever-going continuous source of traffic. I've seen some people who do it, but they mainly do it on YouTube. So video-only campaigns, and well, YouTube was for them a great source before scan, and it's still after scan, even though profitability and performance is way more questionable. So not to take any further, Google knows how to make money, and it always makes it harder for us to analyze things by not unlocking the black box. But the main rules that were 2 years ago are still here. Creative diversification, the topic changes, and one more thing I want to mention is that you can slightly improve user experience by using custom store listings, because this is this beautiful synergy between UAC and ASO. By creating themed topics on your UAC campaign for a specific ad group, and creating a better screenshots on your Google Play Store. That can potentially lead to better results. But it doesn't always do. But you will not know until you try.
Sure. Quickly, to follow up, for those in the audience that may not be aware, can you elaborate on what you mean by lack of signal and broken data on iOS?
Well, if you don't know why iOS is broken after scan, guys, you're in trouble. You should have known it 2 years ago. But on the other hand, what I mean by this is that Google cares about data points, about everything else. Yes, creative is a king. Yes, content is a king. But Google is built by engineers, not designers. Sure. This is why, if you don't have a good scan schema, and if you're not willing to invest millions to feed the system with enough data points which are being obfuscated by scan, then it's very hard. So basically, the ones who suffer are small and medium businesses who are not willing to invest millions and wait for 2 or 3 years to get their money back.
Yeah, and something I've noticed, I don't know if this ties in with what you see, is Google very much privileges Firebase.
Oh, always. I mean,
yes.
OK, so one thing. I hope Google people will not hate me, but Google reps get a bonus every time they sign a client switch from MMP to Firebase. Why? Because Firebase is their own system, and what they are trying to do is to enrich the quality of signals. But what it also means that we are basically giving Google all our data for free.
Yeah, yeah. And I have heard it said, do not quote me on this, that Firebase maybe in some way looking at device signals that may or may not be forbidden by certain other companies.
Never. Yeah. Trillion-dollar company always follow all the compliances.
Yes, I fully agree. To switch gears a bit, right? So we talked about UAC, we talked about Meta. Dan, you work and you focus a lot on channels that some would consider not as mainstream, primarily Taboola, and Outbrain, and paid content. again, for folks that are not as plugged in, can you talk about what the typical user flow is on these channels, and what are some of the parameters or elements that you see contributing to your success on these channels?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're probably not the biggest ones on Taboola and Outbrain, but definitely within educational verticals or also within apps. I mean, Taboola and Outbrain aren't one of the sponsors here, but I hope next year they will be. But to speak on them specifically, native advertisements is what they do. So it's a lot like display ads, but it's always going to be on a news website. So what you're trying to achieve is having it be as similar to a news article as what people are reading. They click on it. It's kind of a seamless experience. And the biggest metrics that we focus on, I would say, is making sure that above the fold image, everything, the first paragraph, the CTAs, and I think all the content that goes into that, that's where we're optimizing the most. So for us, we have our, what we call like TPAs, top performing articles. So we try to make it like an article format. And we have MPAs, like mid-performing ones. So those ones we're doing the most optimizing and testing and bringing them up to the best performers.
Sure. Of course, the top performing articles, they're at the top of the funnel. It's my understanding that there are a couple of possible flows that can happen. You can send users to a landing page. You can send users to the App Store. What, in your experience, do you see most effective? And maybe that's not a single answer.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've kind of built our own magazine. And so it's a landing page that we send people to. They have that experience. And then for us, the main thing we're doing is sending people straight to the App Store. Okay. I used to be that only helped us for mobile, but now we're doing also the onboarding funnel for desktop. So
sure. And for folks that are not Blinkist, and if this is something they want to be testing, are there considerations you'd recommend keeping in mind for them to decide whether to send people to the App Store? Let's just say they wanted to set up an MVP plan. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend that MVP plan to be to test paid content channels? But sorry.
No, I mean, I think it's a good question. I mean, the most important things, in my opinion, if you're going to start a channel like this, and potentially any channel, I guess, would be obviously doing a competitive research first. So finding out what people in that area or that within native ads or on news websites have similar to you feel, and then I would go off of replicating that. So.
Sure.
For us, obviously, it's books and it's focusing on that. But if you are more in like a fitness area, maybe you'd make those tweaks based off of that.
Sure, for sure. Gotcha. To go over to you, right? A lot of your work is focused on marketing and growth holistically, not purely just top of the funnel marketing per se. And I think your perspective is particularly interesting because you have a view of what's happening on the product and growth side as well. And I understand you're able to borrow some practices from the product and engineering teams to help marketing teams operate. Are you able to share what those look like?
Yeah, of course. The thing is that I think it's quite a common story that when you have some initiative that you want an engineering or a product team to work on, and you go to them and you suggest that, very often you will get an answer that they have no time, no resources, or that it's already in the backlog. Sadly, it very rarely gets out of there. What I see is that with lean marketing teams, like for example ours at Mimo, it's also quite common that we have scarce resources and we have to prioritize ruthlessly. So what really helps us is to have this so-called agile marketing approach. So we have bi-weekly sprints during which we plan our work. It's not too long to get stuck and to not be able to make changes and adapt if needed. We also borrowed some of the rituals from the engineering teams. I don't think that to be successful, you have to borrow all of them, like, for example, daily stand-ups. Some of this can be asynchronous, some of this can be happening. I personally find doing the retrospectives after every sprint fairly useful, because this way you can, again, learn from your mistakes, figure out why things did not go the way they were planned. Did we plan for too much or and under-deliver? So this really helps you learn. And maybe another thing that we are definitely borrowing is to decrease the amount of time necessarily like wasted as much as possible. And with this, asynchronous communication helps a lot. That's why we have a set of various templates for various tasks, which means when we are planning the sprint and coming up with the sprint stories, we try to fill in, most importantly, the why section and the potential outcome for the whole company to see, and for us to be very transparent why we're actually working on this instead of 100 other things we could be possibly working on.
Yeah. Is there an example? What does a marketing sprint look like? What would it contain? Again, to the extent you're comfortable sharing.
Pretty much every team member makes a plan of what they will be working on, and we have a mix of different stories for App Store optimization, which are typically covering experimentation with visual assets, improving like our potentially pushing keyword rankings, maybe pitching for featurings. Then we have the paid user acquisition section, where we also plan all the growth experiments in this area. I also document a lot of learnings. So we have this very neat, I would say, board, which is also visible and transparent for the whole company, where you can see the things moving throughout the sprint. And the very interesting column for me personally is the results, or like done section, because it's exciting when something moves from waiting for results to done. And this is when we also share the learnings with the rest of the company of what worked and what did not.
Sure. And I think what I liked was what you briefly mentioned, the word asynchronously. And I think that's a very critical part of all of this, to be really able to execute this without being swamped in meetings all along. At least the way I've thought about this is so important to have a writing-heavy culture, which you also express in terms of documenting a lot of these sprints, at which can unlock a lot of efficiency. So thank you for sharing. Yeah,
I feel like you really need to try to strike the balance between pushing for this over bureaucracy, making your team document everything, versus documenting the stuff that really needs to be shared with the rest of the company to explain why we're really doing all this.
Certainly. And that I know a lot of your work is with your broader company and your broader product teams. Are you able to share what the collaboration looks like cross-company and across marketing and other functions on your teams?
What I think is the most important is to over-communicate rather than under-communicate. And there are two things. I hate meetings. I hate repeating meetings. But at the same time, when there is an issue, I would rather call a person in 4 minutes, just like a quick huddle on Slack, like, hey, where's the hell is my revenue? Let's talk and figure it out on Amplitude where the data is gone. And it actually works better than long Slack threads. So finding that it's all about balance, like everywhere. The balance of enough meetings, or at least being approachable by other people, and not getting stuck in this over-communication. The other thing which actually happened yesterday is when, we have such a beautiful documentation, but when I started doing things step by step, it turned out the documentation is right, but implementation is fucked. Yeah. So it's always good to spend some time QAing stuff, if actually things that you wrote down work the way that you expect them to work. But what it really means for me about working with other teams is try to speak their language. And it's always good what we call switch hats. Like, I'm the marketing manager, but like, hey, today we're going to talk about analytics and I'm going to speak the same language. And it's going to be harder for me because I'm not majoring this, but let's talk about like different topics which are in, so let's talk about properties in Amplitude. So like, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there are very many people here that love meetings, so I think, yeah.
Well, just one more thing to add. Meetings do not have to be boring. We have a really beautiful team culture, and when we have marketing mini all-hands meetings, we always start with either a Kahoot or Scribble, just to make it fun, because above all, we are professionals, but we are humans. Yeah. And it's always so fun to share. Yeah. And especially in the remote companies, and Fabulous has been remote since day one, so for the last 9 years. we have a meme culture, we have a background meme culture, so it doesn't sound like we are distant, quite the opposite. And by that, we try to make meetings informative, but also like funny, so we don't get bored.
For sure, icebreakers definitely make a huge difference. And Nat, also to add to what you said, in terms of over-communication, I think asynchronous over-communication actually doesn't take so much time in my humble experience. And sometimes, even if I need, at least on our team, if I need to even yell at somebody, we'll just do it via Loom, which we screen share and say, this is what's messed up, can you fix this? And I think I have learned to be a lot more patient with asynchronous because it's my experience that just we get a lot more done if I just send a Loom, wait for the other person to get back in 30, 45 minutes or so. And yeah, it's just better for everybody's mental health and sanity.
The best thing about Looms is when you receive a notification somebody watched your video.
Yes, yes, I find that, yeah, I thought it was just me. I'm glad. Yeah, to switch gears a bit, Gaurav, to touch on growth marketing aspects again, I know you've seen some very significant wins from first-party data. Maybe it's just me. I hear the phrase first-party data used a lot. Unpack that for us and tell us what that means, what that meant for you, and the way you used it on a day-to-day tactical level.
Sure. So when we started looking at our marketing funnel, we wanted to see like how we can declutter the data which we have. Like data is obviously messy, and that's how we play around with it. But we wanted to set up a framework to see like how we can make that better, how we can get data which works for us. And also, like in the coming year, we have Privacy Sandbox, we already have scans, so all these things are making more or less life difficult for everyone, but we need to really find ways around it to make it better. So that's what we did. We got a CDP, and when we got the CDP, we realized that we can play around with a lot of first-party data, especially because we have all the sources, since we can connect everything which we have from our data warehouse data, from our platform data like Google, Facebook, TikTok, and everything in one place. And once we have all that in one place, we know we can build audiences. So, and building audiences is obviously something which everyone has obviously done a lot of times, but this is something which we wanted to take a different approach on. One was that we did dial down on which particular users we wanted to actually really target. So we took a funnel-based approach. We took users who, let's say, signed up but did not they take the next step. We targeted them. We took that data. We fed it back to the networks, and we created lookalike audiences as well. So now, like recently, funnily enough, we are doing this test with Demand Gen, the new campaign type which Google has for lookalike audiences based on that first-party data. So the way we look at it is to make the full use of whatever we have in-house, rather than depending on whatever is coming from the MMP, whatever is coming from the Google Ads or Facebook or whichever channels we have. And that also helps us to make sure that we know which channel is working or at which stage of our funnel. So one channel could be like really upper funnel, and we know that we can use that data and leverage it to show ads on another platform. So these are the kind of strategies which have really, really worked for us.
Certainly, right, and you're making the most of the data that you do have available, right, and that's unique to your product, and that's uniquely distinctive to help you guys. Yeah, yeah. Dan, to go over to you and to switch gears a bit. We're switching gears quite a bit to make sure we cover a lot of ground. You spoke about, and you spoke before about how you guys have seen a lot of wins from using AI tools for content and idea generation. Talk to us about what that process looks like, and if possible, if you can share any non-obvious wins that you've seen.
I mean, yeah, I think that when using AI tools, and like the buzzword we're using all day, but there's the simple ways that we choose to use them, where I think it's like just fixing creative ad text just slightly and populate this 5 times. Like, I think that's the good way of using it, but then obviously feeding it in the information that you already have, like you were just speaking of, Gaurav, and saying, these are we have like 27 different categories, for example, of like science, history, politics, things like that. Feeding that kind of information, now give me different ad text with this information. I think is from creative ad text. And to take that to another level, just doing the visualization, whether you're doing an image or whether you're doing a motion ad or a video, I think it's easy enough when we use AI and we're just like, hey, give me a woman who's in a hallway. That we all know that doesn't work very well. It's a struggle, and the eyes are all weird. But I think the more you're using these tools with input, so this is my best creative, I put this one in, and now I just want you to change the background color. I just want you to apply it for older generation, or I want you to make this person look slightly older, slightly younger. We all know that that is the best way to test, is to have the very minor changes, exactly. Yeah. And that, I think, is something that we've definitely learned, and we are capitalizing on more and more.
Yeah, it ties into what, in some ways it has parallels with what Gaurav said in terms of using your own secret sauce, if you will. I think somebody I know described this very well. They're like, in any AI tool, if you just put inputs, you're going to get garbage. You are the secret ingredient, and if you don't put you into the input, it's just not going to be helpful or effective.
Right.
Yep. And Katya, are you able to speak to any of the ways you're using AI tools on your team across the funnel?
Well, I mean, we tried stuff at the top of the funnel. I think also, as was mentioned, for tweaking the copy, double-checking the copies, a very nice use case, especially if you have non-native speakers. Like this really helps us avoid a lot of mistakes. Also, we used AI to add voiceover to some of our video creatives together with, we also designed an animation. And to my surprise, this worked well. I did not expect to see a change in click-through rates, but it happened. It worked quite well. And maybe speaking of the use cases when you can provide some input, our CEO, Johannes, actually created a version of the bot which is trained on our internal style guide and on our internal communication, so that when you create some new piece of content, whether it's for the App Store or for the ads, you can run a quick check, and it will give you advice on how you can fix it. For example, to avoid the use of emojis, which we're trying to, or some other types of input. So this has been quite helpful for us at the top of the funnel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I know we are almost coming up on time, so let's do a quick rapid fire round of questions. Since AI is very top of mind for everyone, that's what everyone's curious about. Let's quick rapid fire. What are some non-obvious strategies you've used for AI tools, or a non-obvious tool that you have used? Pick any one. Give us a very brief rapid fire thing. Gaurav, let's start with you.
I would say, in terms of applications which we have, Microsoft Designer has been working quite well, which I personally use. It's like a very good alternative to Canva, and I love using it. I don't need to bug my creative team to make this small change. I can do it by myself with simple prompts, and it works.
Great. Nat?
I use AI when I read to write a long email saying no in a polite way.
Yes. Wonderful.
I would still say using it for voicing over our creatives was a non-obvious but interesting win.
Yeah, I would double down on that. Obviously, you would take out any specific numbers, but when I have a really detailed thing that I know so much about and I want to give an update to the company, I will be like, okay, please make this condensed into 2 sentences. And sometimes, even as a native English speaker, that can improve and make it more readable for everybody else.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that we are very close to time. So thank you so much for the amazing insights and inputs today. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the first live recording of the Mobile User Acquisition Show. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.